Episode 91, Growing Through Conflict with Crystal Hansen.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and certified through the Life Coach School. Together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with the coach? Here we go.
How many times have you reached for your phone and pulled up Google Maps to find exactly how to get to where you want to go? Road maps are how we reach our desired destination. Not all road maps lead to a physical destination, however. Many of the destinations we wish to reach are things like emotional connection and intimacy with those we love. This is especially true in the marriage relationship. But as when we follow Google Maps and sometimes take a route we weren't expecting, there is an unexpected but crucial roadmap in relationships that needs to be followed as well. Coach Crystal Hansen has learned that using conflict as a roadmap to reach deeper levels of connection and intimacy in marriage is not only normal, but necessary. If you can't recognize the detours and pitfalls in your relationships and face them head on, that is what leads to the big blowups and problems down the road in your relationship. Listen today to learn how to use conflict to elevate your marriage and get to a deeper level of connection and intimacy with your marriage partner.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. Glad to have you here. And I'm so glad to have with me Coach Crystal Hansen. Crystal, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Crystal has been on before, and we always have a good time. And we are going to have a great time again today. We got lots of good stuff. So introduce yourself, Crystal. Even though you've been here, you need to introduce yourself. You've actually shifted a little bit in your coaching, which I love. And I think it's going to be great. It is great. I know your practice is growing and you're probably getting hard to get into is what I'm thinking, but
Not quite yet. I keep bumping my number up where I'm like, oh, I'm only going to take this many clients. Then I'm like, oh, I'll squeeze a couple more in. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yes, it's getting
anybody there. Listening that wants Crystal, I'm telling you, don't wait long. But anyway, introduce yourself, Crystal. Tell us what you're doing, and then let's get going.
Perfect. Yes. So I'm Crystal Hansen. I have kind of shifted, like you said, Heather. I originally was working with family members of addicts, mostly adult children of addicts, but really the root of that, what I was coaching and doing anyway, is still what I'm doing now. And it's relationships and marriage. And so that's where my work has all been, and seeing that my relationship with my dad, who's an addict, has definitely bled into my marriage and just working through all of that. And so marriage is just kind of my favorite thing, and I love it. So I've kind of shifted gears. And so I'm the couples conflict coach, and I work with couples who feel disconnected in their marriage and feel like they kind of live like roommates, or they just have kind of learned to not really make each other a priority anymore, kind of bridge that gap of disconnection so that they can start creating a relationship that they actually love and want. And for a lot of my clients, they realize it's even relationships that are more authentic and deep and meaningful than they even thought was possible. Mm-hmm. So it's really fun.
Oh, the word conflict, I think, is so interesting because you say the couples conflict coach. And for many people living as like you say, roommates, they probably don't even recognize. Sometimes they probably got into this place where it's comfortable and they don't even recognize that there is conflict. It probably just feels fine, it's just neutral probably.
Yeah.
So I think the word conflict is so good because we don't recognize that the neutrality is actually an underlying level of conflict in some way.
Absolutely. And most of the time when it's new, they don't really realize that the conflict is even there until it turns into contention. It turns into a fight, or it turns into maybe even some stonewalling by one or two parties where they're like giving each other the silent treatment and they don't talk for days. But that's typically the first step, is you really don't even notice that the conflict is there until it does turn into contention or a fight.
Mm-hmm. And really, there's nothing wrong with conflict, right? We need conflict, but it is the contentious part that we get to work on. I mean, we have conflict everywhere in society, and we need, and like I said, we need it. It's important, but there's a difference between conflict and contention. And that's where we figure things out.
Absolutely. In fact, I always tell my clients, you should never avoid conflict. Conflict is not something that we want to avoid. Conflict is actually almost a roadmap, if you will, or the key to creating connection. Because if we don't know what is, I hate to use the word trigger, but if we don't know what's activating us or creating a reaction of either resentment or irritation or frustration, if we don't recognize that, then that's what leads to the big blow up fights and resenting each other. We just start this war inside of ourselves when we just sweep the conflict under the rug, or we just try to keep the peace, or just try to model good behavior, which is normal. We all do it. We all have social and religious conditioning that has made us think that that's actually the more noble path to choose. And it really ends up giving us not the best results that we want.
So I'm listening to you talk, and I know from experience, and for me, my relationships and relationships in general are what brought me to coaching. Like, yeah, I noticed a huge shift in my relationships when I started applying some of these tools to my life. And I went from probably feeling a lack of connection to, I swung all the way over to the other side, which was like, I am in control of how I think and feel. And if I don't want to feel unloved, or if I don't want to feel hurt, like I can shift how I think about these things. And it was a really powerful shift for me. Like, I changed my relationships, I feel like overnight almost. And I know you have too. You have learned a lot of the same things I have, because we participated in a lot of the same programs, but learning some things about relationships and the importance of that conflict. Like, yes, I tried really hard not to have to feel the conflicts. I just wanted to feel the peace and connection. But I've learned lately that I do need to kind of take a step back towards that conflict a little bit, because it's in that push that we grow, actually.
Absolutely. And I think we've talked about this before. I know we touched on it when we talked about emotions the last part of last year, where it's just, if we can kind of shift our perspective and look at conflict, not as a problem, but more like a notification. It's kind of that notification of like, oh, here's somewhere that I can improve or up level, or this is some awareness that I can take. And then now what do I want to do with it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The interesting thing is that it's really scary to go from this place of, you know what, I'll just take 100% control of my emotions and change the way I think about this so that it feels better in my life. Mm-hmm. And then to actually take that step forward again and be vulnerable and share, like, you know what, this actually, I don't love this, because I feel, when this happens, I think these thoughts that make me feel this way. And that's my responsibility, right? Like, we can take responsibility for that. But in a relationship, it is give and take. Like, why would we be in a relationship with somebody if we didn't want something from them?
Yeah. Well, and I love what you're even explaining, because it's really what you're talking about is vulnerability, like showing up to and taking complete ownership and saying, this is how I think and feel. And I'm just showing up exposed, and I'm just going to like tell you how it is. And that's actually the most loving thing we can do. It feels the most uncomfortable. It's definitely not anybody's favorite thing, but it is what leads us to self-compassion. And it shows our spouse that we are showing up in that space where we are open, and they can feel that vulnerability too. We kind of map each other as spouses. We kind of know what each other's thinking and when the other one's kind of going out on a limb there for a bit. And it kind of helps with that, breaking the ice a little bit, but it leads to that collaborative relationship. It leads to that connection, and it leads to a place where you can actually love each other where you are as humans that are just trying to come together to create something beautiful. And it's hard. It's not always easy.
No, it certainly isn't. So what I've learned is, in learning to communicate kind of more of, yes, this is how I feel. I would rather feel this way. If you could somehow respond this way or give me this sort of emotional support, I would love that. And then the key there is to be able to then leave it there and not make it mean something about us when and if they aren't necessarily able to give us the response that we need or that we think that we want. Am I making any sense?
Yes, you are. Because I think what I'm hearing you say too, and this is the truth for me, oftentimes when there is some type of conflict or contention in a marriage, our first instinct as a human to see where the danger is, right? So we look at this other person and it's like, well, if you could do this, or if you weren't doing this, then I wouldn't feel these things.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can just kind of slow it down a little bit, and it's practice. I would love to say that I have mastered this and I don't ever get in fights with my husband, but if he was on here, he'd tell you that we both don't always act perfect, and that's fine. That's okay. We're not here to be perfect. But what it is actually slowing down and being like, okay, what am I making their behavior or their words mean about me? I'm creating this. What is it? And it takes us out of that victim powerless mode and puts us into a driver's seat where we can be like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. This is the story that I'm creating in my head. Is it true? Do I believe it? Do I like my reasons why? Before you even have the conversation, it's kind of taking that step back. If you have to take some space, that's great. For a long time, I had to take space. I had to remove myself. I'm sure you could probably say the same, Heather, but like you have to kind of practice this. And sometimes it is just taking a step back and then circling back to have that conversation. But eventually that does become like a muscle memory and a habit where you can do it a lot quicker and faster, which is great.
Yeah. I think back to when I got married, and at your bridal showers, they'll ask people to give you words of advice, and people would say things like, or I think one of the ones I always remember was, don't go to bed angry.
Yep.
And for me, as the older I've gotten and the more training I have and application I've made into my life, it's like, oh, go to bed angry, because you will see things totally different in the morning with a clear mind, and you'll be able to have a conversation that's much more meaningful because it's not loaded with emotion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we function our worst when we are tired and high emotion, like intense discomfort or like anger or aggression or irritation. That's when we function our least healthy. So why on earth would we ever want to have a conversation when we're tired and already irritated? It's probably not the best.
Yeah.
Circling back, like you were saying, like still, like we always don't go to bed angry, but then make sure you have the conversation later. Because a lot of times we'll go to, and I think maybe let's give them all those lovely generational grandmas and parents that have told us that information. Because I mean, it is true. If you go to bed angry and you don't ever circle back and have the conversation, then yeah, it's kind of sweeping it under the rug again. But as long as it's like, we're going to take some space, we'll talk tomorrow. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. So conflict is good.
Yes.
Being angry is good too. I mean, I think it goes right along with conflict. Like it's a roadmap. We don't always love the way that it feels, but it's necessary for us to see where our relationship can improve. Because once again, why would we enter into relationships if we weren't going to grow? If we weren't going to grow together. And I think, is it David Snarch, or I can't remember who was, it says that marriage is a growth machine. Who was it that said that?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, and it's true, right? If we're together, not just to go along hunky dory. Well, and it is enjoyable when we do, but we actually grow and progress so much more when we do butt up against each other a little bit and have to figure things out and then repair it and then progress and keep going.
Absolutely. And I love how you say that, like, getting mad and being uncomfortable is a good thing, because what motivates us to change? If everything's fine, kind of going back to what we were talking about before, where it's like, let's just sweep it under the rug. Let's keep the peace. That's fine. We can live like that. And that's completely fine. But we're also putting a ceiling on our connection and our collaboration and our intimacy as a couple, because we can only reach the highest of highs when we have the bar set, at a lower end. Whereas if we are willing to kind of push that and be willing to feel the discomfort, that's going to move that ceiling up of like how much growth and how much, like, with that growth comes more connection, more collaboration, more like we get comfortable with that vulnerability and we can take it a step further. And it just breeds more of the relationship that we want, instead of having it be kind of polite and pretend, like how JFF explains it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We disagree. There's harmony, and then there's the disharmony, and then there's repair. And then it's in that repair that we actually grow bigger and stronger together. And then there is harmony, and then there is going to be disharmony, and that is necessary. We need it.
Absolutely. And that has been the the plan from the beginning, right? We see that in the scriptures. We see that everywhere where it's like, okay, things are going great and everybody's happy. And then guess what? We have some humbling and we have some like aha moments of like, oh, this is some places that I can improve. And because of that, that has led to the growth of all of us humans down here and growth of the church even. So
yeah. Ooh, that's a great point. Okay. So conflict is good. Anger is good. Feelings are good. What else? Anything else you want us to learn or know today?
You know, I think that we've covered quite a bit. And I know that sometimes it can feel daunting and it can kind of feel intimidating a little bit to be like, you know what, like, I really am just supposed to accept this. Or sometimes it turns into like, how do I get the fighting to stop? Or my spouse does this. And that's where I love to help clients see that we all have, it's Gottman. I love how the Gottman Institute has the 4 horsemen and it talks about different fighting styles. We all have different ways that we fight and we're all kind of a little bit of both, but we all kind of gravitate to more. So like whether some people like disconnect and they stonewall and they just give the silent treatment. And some people are like more critical and some people just start blaming, doing the blame game and things like that. We all do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. What we want to do is love ourselves exactly where we're at and realize and see it's like, oh, it makes sense that this is how I act or how I'm showing up because it's a habit. It's the way that I've seen it before. This is just the habit our marriage has been in. This is like a familial or cultural habit that I've noticed pop up. Loving yourself exactly where you are is what's going to get you to growth. Punching yourself in the face or beating yourself to change isn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. So having that love for yourself first will open the door for you to learn and grow. And then having that love for your spouse will come in. And it's not necessarily like a step of like, I love how Amy Gianni taught us this in advanced relationship certification, that we have to know, love, and grow. And it's not like that's a check. Okay. We know everything. Check. We love everything. And check. Now we're growing, right? Mm-hmm. It's fluid. We're going through all of it. We're going to constantly becoming aware of something new and we're going to learn how to love where we are. And then we're going to grow from there. And it's just this back and forth, beautiful dance that we call life and marriage. And it is what creates, like you said, that marriage growing machine. It makes it a little bit more fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes, as you said, it's this beautiful dance, and sometimes it doesn't feel so beautiful.
Nope.
A lot of times it doesn't feel so beautiful, but when we stick with it and we use it to help us grow, that's where we're able to turn and see the beauty in the ground we've just covered.
Yeah. Some of the hardest things we ever experience in life, we walk like while we're going through it, it's not fun and it's not beautiful. And there's a whole lot of hard, but when we take that step back, whether it's past or in little moments of time when you're going through hard, whatever that may be, you can see the hand of God or heavenly parents in it. You can see the Savior in it. You can see the love and the growth in it. And that makes it worth it.
Yeah. Your know, love, and grow, like you said, that we learned from Amy Gianni. I think that know part, if I'm going to recap our conversation, and you did a little bit too, but that know is knowing the conflicts, right? Knowing why we have conflict, knowing what our differences are, and knowing what we need to feel better, right? That's Absolutely. The know. And then the love is having compassion for ourselves and realizing, like you said, the societal, the cultural, the things that play into why we react the way that we do, why we think the way we do, and have some ultimate compassion for ourselves and for our partners and whoever it is that we're in relationship with. Like that know and that love are right there. And they go back and forth always, and then the grow is the combination of all of those. So anyway.
Yeah. And I love that the last one isn't perfection, right? Like,
oh yeah.
Not perfection. We're not doing this to never fight or never have conflict again. That's not the goal.
Because guaranteed you're going to, and you want to. You don't want to ever get to the place where it's just like, never.
Yep. Absolutely.
We could continue this conversation, but I feel like we've given people so much to think about I think it's just reframing and giving them a new way to look at the things that probably frustrate them right now, the things that they think they need to fix, that they need to change. We need to stop having conflict. We need to there's something wrong with us because we do this. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so important for people to have a different perspective and knowing actually there's nothing wrong with this. We're actually on the exact right track. Maybe what we what our opportunity here is to learn how to have this conflict in a more productive way and use it for our growth rather than just to keep us like stuck.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's going through this. I mean, I always tell my clients too, divorce is always an option for sure, but making that choice should always come from a healthy place where you have really gotten yourself to a clean, healthy place and worked through all of this. So no matter what, going through this work, whether it ends in divorce or it ends in a more collaborative, loving marriage, either way, it's a win because you and your spouse are going to grow regardless. And just because divorce ends doesn't mean a family unit does. So there's really not a problem with both. There's not a wrong or a bad outcome in this situation at all.
Crystal, thank you so much. There's so much that we can take from this, not just in our marriage relationships, but in any relationship that we have. Thank you. Thank you for helping us learn this and for giving new eyes to something that we probably all struggle with and are uncomfortable with in our lives and our relationships. So before we go, tell us where people can find you, where they can find more of you.
Great. So I have a website, crystalhansencoaching.com. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. I also have a private Facebook group that is Couples in Conflict. And I have a podcast that is going to be dropping here pretty soon. So all of those places, but everything is linked on my website or on Instagram. So
awesome. We will link to all those things in the show notes. Thank you everybody for being here and we will see you next time. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.